Okay, so hello everyone. This video is going to talk about Gene's personality. Normally you have read the book, so you know who Gene is. And if you don't, you need to know that during this video I'm going to spoil the beginning, the middle, and the end of the book. So, read the book. Gene's personality. First of all, Gene is an intellectual. In something like chapter 4, he says he got A in all subjects but one. If it wasn't for Phineas, he would have got A in all subjects. This is not easy. Gene is definitely an intellectual. That's his first character trait. Second one, Gene is practical. Frighteningly practical. In chapter 3 we have a description of life during World War II, which says, wrong page, "The war was and is reality for me. I still instinctively live and think in its atmosphere. These are some of its characteristics. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is the President of the United States, and he always has been. The other two eternal world leaders are Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin. America is not, never has been, and never will be what the songs and poems call it, a land of plenty. Nylon, meat, gasoline, and steel are rare. There are too many jobs, and not enough workers. Money is very easy to earn, but rather hard to spend, because there isn't very much to buy. Trains are always late, and always crowded with servicemen. The war will always be fought very far from America, and it will never end. Nothing in America stands still for very long, including the people, who are always either leaving or on leave. People in America cry often." So here we have an absolutely emotionless description, which proves that Gene basically remembers that nylon, meat, and gasoline were scarce, but doesn't feel the need to tell us about what he felt, about how he felt, and that proves that he is quite practical. I'm not saying he's emotionless, because he isn't, but he is practical. Third point, Gene is an observer. It's also proved in this description because he remembers people in America cry often. This description is basically a list of observations, and the fact that Gene is an observer proves, but justifies for him to be the narrator of the novel, because he can testify for what he observed, as he is an observer. Of course, along with the fact that this novel is highly autobiographical, that Gene is John Knowles, that Devon is Exeter. So, yeah. The fact that Gene is an observer definitely contributes to him being the narrator. Okay, that's for the quick part. Now let's get to the important part, which is Gene's personality and attitude with, and especially towards, Phineas. It begins, in the three first chapters, Gene is mostly a follower, Phineas' follower. It begins with Phineas getting Gene to jump from the tree, and Gene thinking, what the hell am I doing there? And Gene also tells us Phineas' voice is the equivalent in sound of a hypnotist's eyes. See chapter 1. Which proves that Jean follows Phineas just as someone would follow a hypnotist. We see this quite a lot of times in the 3 first chapters, especially when Phineas breaks the swimming record in chapter 3, where again Phineas acts and Jean observes him. That's for the beginning of the novel, because then things start to change. Since, well, it kind of begins in chapter 3. Well, we're hinted since chapter 1, when the two boys are fighting in the mud, but really in chapter 3, we've got the real, it's the real actual time when Jean tells us that he's jealous of Phineas. When Phineas breaks the swimming record, Jean tries to calm down his conscience, telling himself that he cannot, something like, you have the right to envy your best friend a little, but Jean's jealous, and that explodes in chapter 4 with Jean's big rivalry crisis, where he begins to get really paranoid about Phineas trying to ruin his studies. And this is probably the reason, his jealousy, his envy to be Phineas, that takes him to Giants the Limb. Maybe to put Phineas down, to bring him back to as a human being, instead of, Phineas sometimes looks a bit like a god when he breaks the swimming record, for example. But, from chapter 5 onwards, rivalry disappears. In chapter 4, when Phineas falls, rivalry disappears. Probably because from that time, Phineas becomes dependent on Jean, and just like Jean was on Phineas, and even more, because Phineas' leg is crippled. So Jean has no reason to consider Phineas his rival, because Phineas cannot play sports anymore, and whereas Jean can still study. Then, from chapter 5 onwards until Phineas' death, Jean slowly, bit by bit, becomes a part of Phineas. It begins with Jean putting Phineas' clothes in chapter 5, and he feels like a Spanish grandee. So, still admiration for Phineas, although jealousy and rivalry have disappeared, and definitely an envy to become a part of Phineas by putting his clothes. And he also tries to confess, because Jean thinks that if Phineas had done the same thing to him, that's what Phineas would do, which proves that he wants to be like Phineas. Until he realizes he's hurting Phineas even more. Then Jean begins fighting for Phineas with Quackenbush, when Quackenbush calls him maimed. And the real moment when Jean becomes a part of Phineas is chapter 8, when Jean starts first in chapter 5, he clearly says it to us, 5 or 6, I don't remember, when Phineas says, if I'm not gonna play sports, you're gonna play them for me. Gene tells us this is what he desired since he met Phineas, to become part of Phineas. And then Gene starts playing sports for Phineas and really pushing his limits. He runs across the track faster than ever before. He makes 30 tractions, whereas he was barely able to make 10. So yeah, we can say that from that moment, Gene has become a part of Phineas, from the moment he begins to play sports for Phineas. This kind of symbiosis, osmosis between Gene and Phineas lasts until the end, really until the very end, when Phineas dies. And even then, Gene says, it was like burying a part of myself, and you don't cry in these circumstances, which proves that even through Phineas' death, Gene has always been a part of Phineas since Phineas' fall. So that also explains the trauma Gene lived and suffered from, and for 15 years, because he killed in some way a part of himself by making Phineas fall, then trying to confess, and basically all his acts in the book from Phineas' fall, from gianting the limb. And so that explains Gene's trauma, and that also explains the fact that Gene comes back to Devon 15 years later to put some distance between the events and himself, to come in out of the rain, something like that, and basically to bury Phineas once and for all.